instruction to the Levites. You must serve faithfully and wholeheartedly in the fear of the Lord. Faithfulness is love trusting. When Hezekiah was king, in 2 Chronicles 31 and verse 12, it says of the people, they faithfully brought in the contributions, tithes, and dedicated gifts. They were a dependable, reliable people. Jeremiah, in chapter 23, it says this, let the one who has my word speak it faithfully. Is not my word like fire, declares the Lord, and like a hammer that breaks the rock in pieces? There was a minister in a large church, and he was asked what he felt was the outstanding need in his congregation. And he replied in a single word, faithfulness. He said, 50% of my church members are hangers-on who are getting a free ride and contributing nothing from purse or person. 25% promise to do something and then, after a few stabs at it, drop out. They lack fidelity. This life of this church, he said, is carried on by the remaining 25%. The 19th century American revivalist D.L. Moody said this, if we could get people who put their hands to the plough to decide that they will never draw back, no matter what the wind or the weather, what a powerful church we would have. That list of fruit of the Spirit says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Who do you know who lives such a life? This is the very character of Jesus that is being formed in us as we abide in him. We can be faithful with his faithfulness. This fruit is supernatural. It's not in me. I'm not like this. Oh, temperamentally, we know people who have some of these areas very clear in their life. My father was a very patient man, a lovely man. We can think of different people who manifest some, but what God is concerned about is that his children should bear a true family likeness, that Christ should be formed in us, and the ninefold fruit of the Holy Spirit be manifest supernaturally in our lives. And guess who'll be most amazed? It will be us. Because we'll realize I am such a fidgeting person. I'm such a fidget all the time and impatient, and suddenly I'm manifesting patience. That's not like me. No, but it's like him. And he is living in me. He wants to manifest his Spirit in that way. Imagine the joy on that day when you stand before the judgment seat of Christ, and from the lips of the Master, when we see his face, you hear those wonderful words, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your Lord. I will put you in charge of many things. You know, it's not lazing around playing a harp on a cloud. That's not what glory is all about. There are jobs in the kingdom. You've been faithful in a little, have charge over 5 cities. You have been faithful in much, have authority over 10 cities. There are jobs in the kingdom. It's not bone idling throughout eternity. It's working without any hindrance from the evil one, without that down drag of sin, without that frustration that thwarts us when we want to break through. It's working as we were created to work. Jesus said, "My Father works and I am working too." And against all the enemy's tactics on this earth, God is working and wants to break through in your life in a new dimension. He wants to break through that others may see Jesus in you and realize that this is not kidology. This is reality. It works because he lives, and he lives in me. Faithfulness is not an optional extra in the life of the believer. It's not like a pick and mix menu where you can choose this but you needn't have that, and you choose this and you don't fancy that. Faithfulness is not an option, it's a command. 1 Corinthians 4 verses 1 and 2. So then, men ought to regard us as servants of Christ, and as those entrusted with the secret things of God. Now, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. I don't know if you've noticed this, but spiritual fruit often begins to grow together, not in isolation, but in little clusters. Joy and peace, and it starts to manifest together. Now, love and faithfulness often are like those twin cities. We have cities in England that are twinned with a city in Germany, or twinned with a city in France. And here's a twinning in the scriptures: kindness and faithfulness. They tend to go together. Let me give you examples. When Abraham's servant had been given a daunting task, he was to go and find a wife for his master's son. And he kept calling upon the Lord to guide him. I being in the way, the Lord led me. You remember when he came to the well, and there was Rebecca. And in Genesis 24, verse 27, Abraham's servant, having set eyes upon Rebecca, who would be Isaac's bride, he says this: "Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master." Or do you remember when old Jacob was dying in the land of Goshen, and he called his son Joseph to him, and he didn't want to be buried in Egypt. He wanted his bones to be taken back to the promised land. And in Genesis 47:29 we read this: old Jacob says to his son Joseph, "If I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh," this is an indication of taking a vow, "and promise